Hey everyone, I'm Sam Fry and this is a brand new episode of Technique, where today I'm talking to an artist based in Brooklyn in New York. But before we start, let's hear that theme tune. So, who is this artist we're speaking to today? I'll let her introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Sonia Li. I'm an artist. I work at the intersection between creative technology and fine art. I'm working on a project right now called Movement, and it is a multi-sensory environment designed for dementia patients.
So, as Sonia says, she creates interactive installations. Now, we first met a couple of years ago when she was working on a project called Whale. Now, we talk a little bit about that project within this episode, and then go on to focus on her current project, which is called Movement, where she deals with the topic of dementia. I should say, though, we don't spend a lot of time talking in detail about dementia. We go over the subject broadly and what it's like to work with and create art for people who are experiencing dementia. However, it's not a topic that I've had too much experience with or have a huge amount of knowledge about, so we didn't really go into any huge amount of detail in the episode. Instead, what I wanted to find out more about with Sonia is what her process looks like and how she creates immersive, interactive exhibitions where people and their interactions with her work are at the centre. Our interview was conducted over Skype, and my first question was, how did she get started in the creative industries?
So I did painting, sculpture, printmaking, papermaking, like very traditional, like non-technology related at all. Actually, I didn't really know how to use the computer when I was trained in the visual arts. But as a part of the traditional visual arts training, we talked a lot about this idea of personal expression. So my work has always dealt with the expression of humanity and also my own personal growth as well. Actually, that's really like how I started designing or like developing my own language as an artist, is really like expressing my own personal growth and the stage that I was in. So I think that when I got into technology, everything made a lot of sense for me because it's a very efficient and malleable tool to bring the expression of humanity alive. So my work is really about the visceral, the visceral aspect of humanity. So the technology is really just a tool. I made this installation called Whale, and it's an interactive multi-channel sound installation. It has to do with an experience that reflected my inner being at that stage in my life. It's very much about the psychological, everything. That piece was a metaphor for something else. So, the users lay on the subsonic vibrating bed, experiencing waves of vibration through the body. And when they speak into the microphone, their user's voice triggers whale sounds. And I use sound in a very sculptural way. So you push sound through the speakers and it makes like a sound spatialization. And when you experience something like as foreign as whale sounds, with the whale sounds vibrate through you and moving around you, and ocean sounds as well, in complete darkness, you don't see anything. So like the only thing you do is you go within yourself. And the first thing that you think of is usually who you are as a person. So I wanted to make a piece that expressed who I was at that time. But also I realized through that piece that I very much make work for other people. And I guess it's a way for me to connect with other people as well. This idea that I am presenting myself in a very vulnerable way in this format for you to come and lay on this bed and enjoy it. So, people have asked me like how do I experience whale? So I always say, when the whale sounds shake through my body, I'm always reminded of the strength within myself and the work that I've done to become the person that I am today. So so it's very much about me, but that experience, like the experience of whale itself, I when people come to use it, I would never tell them what it's about. I would just say, go in there, like figure it out. And it's interesting because people say very different things. So like some people say that it's like very warm and comforting and very peaceful and happy, and other people say it's very intimidating and powerful and otherworldly. And it has a lot to do with who they are as individuals. So then that's when I realized, oh, you know what? I really make work for other people to understand themselves better. So with designing for dementia, actually, this project is an extension of Whale that I'm currently working on. It made a lot of sense for me to conscientiously start designing for people that are in need, and really like using my artistic sensibilities to empower people in a more direct way. Because I mean, I love going to galleries. I love going to museums. I think they're a very valid existence. However, people who have disabilities don't necessarily have the resources or understand, like, why, or understand, like, why they should be going to museums, why they should be interacting with art. So I guess this huge speech, this roundabout way of answering your question is this idea that I'm currently working with, along with my research, that my work channels the science of neurology through artistic sensibilities, basically.
What actually really interested you in the whale and actually made you think this could be a really interesting creature to explore in a piece of art?
Yeah, so it was really coincidental. I mean, I was working at the Museum of Natural History, and as a staff member, you're able to walk around the museum after hours, like at all times. So it was very interesting for me to be running around the museum by myself after hours and being in the whale room, and just laying under the big whale, and having coming across like different kinds of whale sounds just on the internet, also like different people that I've spoken to, and my own research. The Museum of Natural History has a really amazing library, actually. So like I did a lot of research while I was there. And it's everything I do is a metaphor. So like the whale, I was channeling myself through whale based on my research of making a direct correlation to the physical mass and strength, longevity, complexity of their songs, and their natural habitat to my deeper self and inner strength. So that's really why I chose whale. And they're so foreign, I mean, these animals, they're huge creatures. They exist in this vast world. I was thinking about how I would be able to relate to these animals in this foreign environment. And then I think I realized that, like, I feel like I am like a whale. As strange as it sounds, So yeah, that's how and also their sounds are just so beautiful, so mysterious and so beautiful. You don't know what they're saying, and they go for so long, and they travel across the ocean for so long, and they remember their songs, but they also change their songs, and they sing it for a while until they change it again. And it's not just one whale, it's like they all affect each other, so they all sing the same song, and then maybe one or two whale change a few intonation, and then they all of a sudden they all change. So it's just very fascinating.
So you create a piece of physical art that that you were saying before, that actually it's that interaction between people and the artwork that's really interesting to you. What's it like to then to put that out there and then just observe and see and listen to people, to hear what they're commenting on it, and they're probably bringing out quite different things to what you would have originally imagined them thinking about when they actually go into Whale?
Yeah, actually, you know what? I think that's my favorite part, is listening to what other people say, because it surprises me so much of what other people think about when they experience my work. It's actually completely different than what I intend for it to be.
What would they say? What kind of things would people give as an example?
Well, yeah, like things like when they say it feels very peaceful and warm. I find it to be really strange. Also, I had some people comment that it felt like a mother's womb, and I was just like, really? Like, that's very interesting. Like, yeah. I would never think that, you know.
It's funny to go from your vision of it, almost you're like a whale in this endless space, and they go, oh, it's really warm and comforting, and it is an opposite metaphor, if anything.
Yeah, I get it.
So you were using sound, and you were getting people to interact with sounds quite predominantly. How did you kind of connect the sound and the lighting and the kind of the physical space? What was the process of actually setting that up in a way that actually felt like it was representative or gave an experience like the experience you were trying to create?
Well, the design went through a lot of iterations. I think that at that stage of my art making journey, I was very focused on getting like one design correct. So I went through a lot of iterations, and it really wasn't until I started just tinkering around with the sounds without any sort of like interactivity involved, like tinkering with the sounds, just like, you know, blacking out a room, that I realized that actually initially I wanted people to be standing and have vibration under the feet. Then I realized, I was like, you know, this is in this complete darkness. I feel like I just want to sit or something, you know, like I want to be like still somehow. So then that's how I came up with the concept of laying down. I mean, actually, the design is quite simple, but the experience is very powerful because the content is very powerful.
Do you think a lot of that? I know you're a dancer, and when we spoke last time, you were actually sat in a dance studio, and that's what you spend a lot of your time doing. Do you think actually that's brought out an awareness of your space, your own personal space, and how you interact with the world? So does actually dance make you much more aware of the world, and therefore when you're creating a kind of physical space for other people to come into, do you think that's helped you in some way?
Yeah, I think it's dance is so important to me, and also I think like being aware of your own physicality is extremely important because we live in our bodies. You know, I think a lot of people can argue that like, yeah, you can live in your brain, your mind, you know, but you can't really deny that your brain still lives in this body. So for me, dance is really a way to understand like how your body relates to the environment, even like in your own body in relation to like everything that exists in your own body, like making room for your body, understanding like how you can maneuver your own body. Actually, it's taught me quite a lot about everything really, about art making, about like ways to explore things and tinker with things that I probably wouldn't have when, you know, before I started dancing. So I mean, I'm still very much like learning a lot about dance. Yeah, it's it's really incredible. I actually had a really great dance class yesterday where I realized, I was like, oh, if I just shift to the left, I can actually make more room in the right side of my rib. It's like, and that pertains to dance, obviously, but like, it actually also pertains to life. It's like when you're confronted with something that you want to do, you're like, oh, well, this way is not going to work, but if I shift over here, then there's more space over here. It's like a lot of these things apply, I think. I always say that I'm an artist by profession and I'm a dancer by identity. So it definitely affects my work in a very direct way, because even though I design for other people, there's still so much of me in the work that I do.
From the garden, hear the clinging of the chimes, the last tomatoes hanging shriveled on the vines. The autumn breeze is just a promise of the freeze that's coming soon.
So now you're working on a piece called Movement, so very much associated with dance, I guess, but specifically dealing with dementia. So what kind of drew you to the concept of dementia as something that you might want to explore artistically?
Yeah, so I stumbled upon this type of therapeutic environment. They're called multisensory environments. And it's a valid form of therapeutic space. It came from the 70s. It was developed by a psychologist and a music therapist in the Netherlands. And it's very popular in Europe and also in Israel. I wanted my work to go to a place that would directly empower people somehow. And I thought about art in hospitals. And then in my research, I found this type of therapy. So when I was looking at a lot of the existing companies that make equipments for this type of therapy, they were really only meant for children. The imagery is meant for children. The interactivity of the furniture that they make are really meant for children, not really for the elderly. So I thought, okay, there's definitely a need, for the elderly to receive like an appropriate kind of a treatment. So that's how I started designing for dementia. And also, like, personally, I've always liked older people. Like, growing up, I've always gotten along much better with older people. I think you learn a lot from older people.
What are the particular aspects of dementia that you're trying to pull out? I know, for instance, that you're doing work around optical illusions. What part of dementia do you feel that's kind of representing, and actually what's the experience like to create an optical illusion?
Yeah, so I'm developing a series of interactive optical illusions to project in the environment that I'm designing. The thing with optical illusion is that they're very much about the formalities of image making. So like maintaining visual tension and interest and difference while avoiding things that might be psychologically conflicting. It's very interesting. It's really not so far off from like making paintings, in the sense that the brain is usually drawn to difference and also beauty. So I have an advisory board and of experts who have been working this field, designing this kind of environment for 30 years. So in my research and working with these people, I realized that this kind of work it's actually designing optical illusion. It really has to do with movement, actually. It's like visual movement, the tension of movement, the color movement, everything, like all the formalities of image making come together to create these optical illusions so that it triggers or it affects neurogenesis, which is like development of neurons. It also has to do with activating more dopamine in the brain, because when you view art, your brain releases dopamine, which in turn affects neurogenesis, activating the pathways for more neurons to be generated. So in terms of dementia, it's pretty important because dopamine has to do with, feelings of intense pleasure. It has to do with love, memory, cognition, all the important elements that start to deteriorate when you're diagnosed with dementia.
You feel that actually by stimulating the same senses, that actually you're drawing on some of the experience of actually dementia being triggered in itself. Is that fair?
Well, I wouldn't say being dementia treated by itself, but I would say that it allows for people with dementia to have the opportunity to be able to enjoy these visuals and somehow be stimulated by them in some way. I don't think that these optical illusions will be reversing the order of dementia, but I think that it will definitely, I think this type of work contributes to some of the things that dementia may be impacting, like, for example, like what I was saying, memory and cognitive abilities. They're really meant for people who are in nursing homes already. They're usually sitting in wheelchairs or very static. In my own research of going to nursing homes, I found it was very sad because I found most of these patients were just in wheelchairs. They're either sleeping or they're just sitting there, not talking. There's no interaction. So this is my way of reflecting upon what I saw and doing something about it.
One of the things that's really interesting when speaking to Sonia is not just the process of creating a piece of art and working with others to create that, but actually because she's creating installation pieces, the engagement with users and their responses to that piece of art is what it's all about in reality. As much as Sonia might have one view on what she wants to create and why she's creating it, the audiences might have a very different perspective on what it was that they just experienced. And now when it comes to dementia, we've got a really specific audience here. And so I wanted to find out a little bit more about what it's like to work with that specific audience. And does that differ from other audiences?
Yeah, I think so. So with different disabilities, the requirements are really different. So like if I were to develop optical illusions for autism, I would have a very, very different set of visuals. For what I'm doing right now, it's actually more about stimulation. So, I think that my work also, I chose to use the orchid imagery for a few reasons. So, like conceptually, orchids are symbolic of love and peace and beauty and compassion, which is really what the underlying concept of this project of movement is about.
Is there any kind of ideas about actually what you do to kind of complement or to do nothing around those optical illusions themselves?
Well, yeah, so there's going to be sound with it. So when I made these optical illusions, or I'm still making them actually, I have like a huge range of them. I was listening to a lot of Baroque era music. So I think it could be pretty interesting in an environment to use Baroque type music with it. Sound is definitely a huge factor. So the multisensory environment, it engages the five senses. So like there's definitely sound. There's visual. There's scent. There's touch. And there's smell too. So all of these things are they all like work together. So right now, like I just mentioned, I'm really only working one part of it. The sound, I think, is going to come after I'm finished designing this whole array of just the visuals. So in this environment, I'm also designing certain types of furniture that are appropriate for the elderly's physicality. There's a lot of disability I have to be aware of, and also like having nature elements like plants. There's interactivity, so we're developing like an interactive wand where the optical illusion speed changes, the sound pushes through the speakers. There'll be some other type of interactivity as well. So that's something that my team and I are currently working on. Yeah.
That makes sense. Completely makes sense. And I guess
it's like think of it as like a interactive installation for dementia.
But more than that, it's that multi-sensory piece as well. And I guess you have to build up each of those senses as one by one. There must be a lot of kind of research and testing of each of those. So even with the illusions, kind of trying to play those to different types of people to see how they respond. Same with the seating. Actually, if you're going to either purchase or build something bespoke for this piece, actually there's probably going to be quite a lot of seeing how different people sit on it, or whether they sit on it, maybe they kneel on it or lie on it, I don't know. How have you found that process so far? Have you done much of the testing yet? I'm aware that you're saying that you're essentially on the first sense in some ways.
Yeah, so I'm still in the midst of developing. I have some elderly centers that I'm talking to in New York City that we're gonna make a schedule, like a program at these elderly center to showcase these optical illusions. Some of these centers actually have people that have some type of dementia, like an earlier stage. So it could be interesting for them, just to see their feedback. I definitely need to there's definitely user testing involved. And I think that's like in the next few months, we're gonna start doing this whole thing. In terms of designing the furniture, the assistive technology, it's quite challenging actually. Like I've been doing a lot of research on different kinds of disabilities, like people in wheelchairs, like it's very limiting what we can do, especially for the elderly. Like this is another example where existing companies that are making this type of equipment for this type of therapy doesn't really work so well. So like, for example, it works really great when you have kids on water beds, or in hammocks, or like they're laying on the floor, but with elderly people, they can hardly get up. So for them to be laying in a waterbed, I mean, it really requires like 4 people to carry the body. And, it's like, doesn't really work that well. So that's something that we also have to develop, or like find other people to work with.
Cool.
Yeah.
And what would you say if you had one? What could be like the best thing that could happen from this piece? What would your dream be as an outcome from movement?
Well, movement. Moving forward. For myself, and also for the treatment of dementia. Also for my team, I mean, I think of this work as a starting point for developing everybody's sensibilities. So like all of my team, everyone on my team, they all do something different, and they're all doing something that they would like to be doing, down the line in their lives. So whether that's like interactive software programming, designing, or, researching, or like animation or whatever. So for me, it's important for the work to go somewhere and to actually benefit people in some way. Personally, I'm hoping for movement to give everybody's career a boost. I come from the art world. I think that this work is it's interdisciplinary. So it's traveling from the art world into another world, or worlds that we have yet to discover. So for me, I'm an artist and I will always be an artist as a profession, but it's actually not very important. Like, I don't care so much about showing in museums and galleries, because for me, that's really just more like vanity, I would prefer for my work to go to a place where it can be empowering to other people. It can be effective, and it's not so important that I guess what I'm trying to say is that, like, I don't necessarily think that establishing myself as an artist in the art world is the only way for artists to survive. I think what art ultimately is something that you're really good at, that you know how to manipulate. So for me, I have such a solid training in the traditional arts. I know a lot about the formalities of art making, and now I can take those concepts and apply it to other fields. But it's still my art.
And in 1,000 years, when all our bones have disappeared and every word has been erased, still the rivers flow, the sun will glow, the seeds will grow, the wind will come and blow it all away. 'Cause we are just a memory replaced.
So that was Sonia Li and the subject of dementia. And as a reminder, the two artworks that we talked about in this episode were Whale and Movement. You can find more about both of those on her website, which is sonialidesigns.com. In particular, I'd point you towards some of the optical illusions that she talked about in this episode. They can be found on the homepage, or otherwise if you go and look at more detail about movement in particular. And there are videos of both pieces of work, so you can really picture what she's talking about in this episode. So thank you very much to Sonia for being part of this episode, which was a little bit longer this week. And it's also the first time that I've recorded one of these over Skype, so that was a bit of an experiment there as well. But hopefully it turned out okay. Otherwise, we'll be back again in about a month's time. And next time, there's going to be Richard presenting, so you can look forward to that. The music for today's episode came from Kamuku, Josh Woodford and Andy G. Cohen. Otherwise, that's all from us for this month, so we'll speak to you in a few weeks' time. See you then.